62-mile altitude. Moving on, the order also requires those crew members to have demonstrated, quote, activities during the flight that were essential to public safety or contributed to human space flight safety, unquote. This statement is a new addition to the order, and I will repeat it. Quote, activities during the flight that were essential to public safety or contributed to human space flight safety, unquote. So somebody got in there and was like, okay, everybody that goes above 50 miles is not going to get astronaut wings. There is a reclama process. So we'll see if either the Virgin Galactic flight that went up a couple weeks ago or the Blue Origin flight, if they will reclama to the FAA to earn their wings. Now, one might argue that on the first flight in each case might qualify, but the thing against Blue Origin is that it was a completely autonomous flight. It was not flown by those on board at all, and that they might not be considered pilots slash astronauts in order to get the wings.
Here's the thing, though, about that. Let me interject here for a minute, because that I think the autonomous thing is dumb. Like, I think that is so not forward thinking, because the reality is we're going to probably have safer space flight by autonomous things happening. Like, that's the future right there. It is probably more autonomous stuff happening. So it's like, what is that line? So they go up, and SpaceX, a lot of stuff's autonomous. Like, why is that a variable at all? Like, that makes no sense to me.
Well, that was just part of the argument. It wasn't actually in the FAA statement itself.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know what the FAA qualifications are going to be, which gets me back to the point. I don't know if they will consider these first flights to be groundbreaking in terms of flight safety, because I think that would qualify as, okay, you're the first paying customers to go on board, or your first full crew to go on board up into space and back. So maybe. So moving on, the revised order does have a provision to provide honorary wings to individuals who would not otherwise meet the criteria. Huh, honorary wings. What does that mean? Well, they spell it out. There could be individuals whose contributions to commercial human space flight merit special recognition. The Associate Administrator for Commercial Space Transportation, or AST1, has total discretion regarding identifying and bestowing FAA honorary award of commercial space astronaut wings to individuals who demonstrated extraordinary contribution or beneficial service to the commercial human spaceflight industry. These individuals receiving an honorary award may not be required to satisfy all eligibility requirements. The honorary award can be granted posthumously. Unquote. I didn't even start the quote yet, but that is the definition of the honorary awards. Now, it remains unclear at this time if the FAA will recognize the Blue Origin flight or the recent Virgin Galactic trip to space with astronaut wings. I've already said that. I just wanted to foot stomp that. Who knows? There has not been an official announcement. I know there was presentations involved post-flight in both cases for astronaut wings, but I don't know if they will be recognized by the FAA. And to this regard, like, the FAA doesn't award individual pilots with pilot wings when you get your first solo flight in a Cessna 172, right? So I don't know if this is going to move forward in what sort of version it moves forward, because you get on board a Delta 737 and you fly across the country and you get to go to Disney World or whatever. Did you earn your wings? No, you were just a passenger on the flight. So
If
I
you're
don't.
a kid, you did, when they give you your plastic wings when you get off the plane.
I
That's
still got
true.
some.
I
Yeah.
got plastic wings as a kid, so I earned them.
You did.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the thing that I think about this whole thing is I agree something needs to be revised. I don't know that this is the right revision, and the reason why is because the purpose of this is just for pomp. Like that like, it's just for show. That's the whole purpose of the whole wings program. Like it serves no licensing function or no credentials function. Like it's just there for show as an award. That's what it is an award. So why do we need to define these as so broad things? Instead, make it something like NASA or federal government awarded things, because it's the FAA doing this, which is a US based organization, not a worldwide based organization. It's a US organization set on their own restrictions. So just make it so that it's only applicable to, make it more specific. It's US
Oh,
authorized space endeavors or something like that.
yeah.
Why are you still making it so broad like this? Because all it
Well,
takes, so Blue Origin, the next time they go up, they take a big scientific reading or something. Wow, now they get their wings. That's really, like, they deserve it more than the guys that just went up, even though they didn't really do that much in 6 minutes. Like, it doesn't make sense to me, this revision.
you bring up a good point in that both these companies have contracts or are touting the fact that they could have contracts to go into space to fly some short experiments in microgravity, the 4 or 5 minutes of zero G that you get at the apex of these flights. So it's a commercial vehicle, but yet you're doing something for possibly a government organization. So does that then qualify you? I don't know. What difference is that between SpaceX Dragon, even Lockheed Orion as part of the Artemis project, or the Boeing CST Starliner, which is supposed to launch this weekend? We'll talk about that in the future. So what difference would that be? Because those are commercial vehicles, yet they're being used for government purposes. And
Hmm.
so those astronauts, are they going to get wings? Or is the Crew of Inspiration 4, which is going to launch as part of a Crew Dragon ship in September, all privatized? Are they going to earn their astronaut wings? Have they done something that has for flight safety? I don't know.
Exactly. And that's why I think it needs to be just specific to, like, the FAA saying authorized whatever missions, right? Like some form of specific language like that, that it's just, because that gives you the distinction there between random space tourist or random venture that's happening for somebody else for commercial reasons. Like, I don't know. I don't really, because again, it's FAA issuing an award. That's what it is. So FAA should get to decide specifically who it is. And so I don't know. It needs to be as broad as this explanation.
So there are two different programs. There's the government astronaut wing program,
Hmm.
which is defined, and then there's the commercial space astronaut
Right.
wing program, which is what we're talking about. So two different things.
Yep. I get that. But they're both being awarded by a government organization, a US government organization.
So if this was Canada, would you be behind it?
I think, like, Suncast in our chat, he's reading my mind. He says, I think there should be some distinction between going up on a sub 15 flight just for the hell of it and someone who goes up and performs some form of activity better for mankind. And I think that is where the definition of basically an FAA authorized mission or whatever, right? Like an FAA sanctioned mission, or not sanctioned, but not FAA, like a US government sanctioned mission or something like that, where it would be more, it would help better define that.
I think they should just give the wings to the computers because that's what really flew the mission.
Yeah, that too. Why not? Award our cyber. What is it? Our what overlords?
I,
Our
for one, welcome our cybernetic overlords or whatever phrase we want to
yeah,
use.
that thing. Make the joke
Or
right now
AI
here.
overlord.
Yeah, there we go. That one.
I mean,
I don't this was not completely automated. There was somebody on the ground that was pushing the button to start the program.
fair. I mean, I say that mostly in jest, but I feel like we might be getting wrapped a little too much up into what's the proper definition here that just kind of overshadows the fact of, hey, it's pretty cool that we've got 3 different privatized spacecraft that are going to be launching within days of each other in theory. That's awesome. As to the definition as to whether Jeff Bezos and Richard Branson can call themselves astronauts, I don't really care. They can buy themselves whatever titles they want. It's more the other people that supported the mission that's important in that regard.
But see that I think is an important part right there. Is you said whether they call themselves astronauts or not. Nobody's going to take away that because
I mean, what is it?
the
Yeah.
FAA doesn't define what an astronaut is. They define who gets the wings under their guidelines. They
Look,
don't say astronauts.
It's PR at this point in
Right.
time. It's, hey, we gave them these wings. It looks cool. Everyone has a warm, happy, fuzzy feeling inside because we did this, which is not a bad thing. I sound like I'm being a little cynical there. I don't intend to be. It's a good thing when you have positive stories about space exploration and things like that because it gets people hyped and gets people excited. I feel like we're trying to draw a definition in part because of some of the people that were on that flight and in part because of some factors that exist outside the fact that these companies did something fairly remarkable.
Fair enough.
And as I pointed out before, the US was not the first official entity to have commercial space tourism.
That's a
It
good
goes to
point.
the Russians. I mean, the Russians were first in space, first space tourism was on board their stuff. I mean, and we don't just have these companies now. We do still have the Russian space agency Roscosmos and their operation. We also have the Chinese that now have a space station up there and that are actively going up and down. And as we talked about before, India's close behind. You have programs in Japan. There's stuff all over the place. I'm just wondering when Canada's going to get its own rocket.
The only last thing that I want to throw in here is that now that I've seen the two, I just have to say, since all this wing talk has come up, which again, Wally Funk deserves her wings, but I do think though that Virgin wins this one here because as they're coming back down, Blue Origin, big capsule, Virgin is like an airplane. Thus, the promo can be as they're coming down after space, they can start playing Bette Midler, Wind Beneath My Wings. That's why Virgin wins it. No comment.
I'm not going to dignify that with a response.
All right, Chris, go ahead though and tell us a little bit about this craziness that's continuing in the WB land.
Right. So this is an interesting story, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the streaming wars right now. And remember last year when, as the pandemic, we were deep in the throes of the pandemic, and I believe we talked about on this show the story that HBO Max was going to be having all Warner Brothers new release movies for the first 30 days they are out in theaters, available on HBO Max and in theaters as well. And a lot of people, myself included, kind of theorized, hey, this is an interesting little test they get to do over the pandemic to see how new release direct to streaming works out, whether it drives subscribers, things like that. And I'm pretty sure I was someone that said I'd be kind of surprised if they did this in 2022. So I was wrong, evidently. In 2022, Warner is going to continue to follow this hybrid movie release model with a catch, though. They're only talking about doing it with 10 movies, not the entire slate of releases like we're seeing this year. So things like James Gunn's The Suicide Squad, we know is coming to HBO Max. We've got Space Jam there right now. We've got Denis Villeneuve's Dune will be coming there. And we can touch on some of those issues at the end of it. But they are going to continue using Warner Brothers assets to effectively lure subscribers to the HBO Max service throughout 2022. How do we know this? Well, it's earnings call time, guys, which means we get a lot of the CEOs and the bigwigs talking about what their plans are. So during AT&T's second quarter earnings call this week, the company's executives were asked about how the pandemic release model would shape a more permanent release strategy going forward, particularly in relation to theaters. Jason Kilar, the Warner Media chief executive officer, replied and said that while the motion picture format absolutely matters, the company also feels very good about the response that consumers have given in the home. Kilar then went on to say that Warner Brothers will be producing 10 films that will debut on HBO Max the same day they release. While it's not clear which of these titles or which titles these 10 will include, the decisions do indicate that the pandemic has shifted their thoughts into how Warner Media will tackle movie releases going forward. Kilar also stated that the company does not plan to return to a film release strategy of the past. This is interesting. Now, it is only 10 movies here, but you could see an interesting trend here where they go, we're not so sure this movie is going to do as well in theaters, but we can get some buzz by putting it on HBO Max at the same time and drive eyes to that service. Or conversely, if they want to ensure that they're getting more HBO Max subscribers, they could say take the next DC superhero movie and say, hey, this will be releasing both in theaters and on HBO Max. And arguably that would drive subscribers to HBO Max, especially if, as we're in the throes of the pandemic still, just not quite as intense. But also from a perspective of, well, if I subscribe to this service for a month, I can watch the movie as much as I want in that time and not have to buy 5 tickets for my entire family to go. So it's going to be very interesting to see where Warner Brothers goes with this. But more interesting, I think, will be to see how their competitors follow or do similar things as them. We've seen that Disney has their premiere access to things like Black Widow right now. We've seen some of the Pixar movies throughout the pandemic. Paramount Plus has been debuting original movie content on their service. Same with Amazon Prime. Now, granted, Amazon Prime, I think, does the same kind of thing Netflix does, which is put it in theater screens for like a week so it can get considered for movie awards and things like that. But we have seen a shift now where things that are going to the big screen are coming to streaming at the same time. And it did not, in fact, go away. So the real question is, what is this going to do to the industry as a whole? And I, for one, am really curious to see where this goes.
Absolutely, Chris. I'm so glad you brought this story up front, because I was wondering what Warner Brothers was going to do when I went over the box office for Black Widow and what Disney Plus had done with the premium video on demand. It is impossible to equate apples to kumquats here, because Warner Brothers is doing it one way, Disney Plus is doing it another, and Apple TV Plus is doing it one way, Prime is doing it one way. So it's impossible to equate one for one. But
what about apples to kiwis? Can we equate apples to kiwis?
Can we do kiwis to kumquats?
That works.
Okay. So the big thing, though, I think you hit the nail on the head at the end, is things are not static across the board. That these companies keep trying to fiddle on with their recipe on how they're doing this, because what they really want to do is make money. They want to make that sweet box office money that they were making in 2018 and 2019 and the years leading up to it. And they are not doing that now. They are not doing it when you consider the theatrical releases with the direct to video releases, with those in between. I think for large parts, we can consider the Wonder Woman movie to have been a streaming only release. I mean, I know it made $17 million opening weekend in the theaters, but that was, not all theaters were open, whatever. So it was largely a streaming release on HBO Max. Now, how do you relate that HBO Max subscription, which you need, to the Disney Plus subscription and then the premium video on demand? I think that if you take a look at the Black Widow release and the 67% box office drop in week 2, the way they did it with the $30 premium video on demand is not sustainable either. So Warner Brothers, you get to see the movie for a month, and then it goes in some sort of vault for a while, and then eventually it comes back in streaming. If for the Disney Plus model, you get to buy the movie, you have it for as long as you have your Disney Plus subscription to when it comes out in the Disney Plus normal for free streaming. It's different ways to go about it. And I don't think either have been successful. I don't know if we're going to a rental fee. I don't know if we're going to one of these models is actually going to win. I don't know, but I honestly don't think either model is sustainable right now, because neither model can sustain the production of these movies. One thing that could happen, the last thing I'll say here, I know I've been talking for a while. One thing that could happen is that these studios actually drop the total number of movies that they make per year. So we get back to a more 1970s, 1980s style of production where you have a limited number of movies that are available each year.
And I don't think we can actually accurately gauge things until the vast majority of people feel safe going back to the theaters again. Because Black Widow, week 1, you got all those people that are like, hey, I finally feel like I'm ready to go back. I'm going to go and watch this. And most people probably felt safe enough to go once. I don't know if they felt safe enough to go multiple times. And then with that dip, we saw the fact, also people might have bought premiere access, but we saw the fact that there's a hardcore group that'll go watch a movie, but it's not as big as people thought it was. And I think that's partially responsible for those numbers dropping. And to be honest, I have no idea when this returns back to what the old normal was. Let's think of a Marvel method here, where a movie's in theaters for 12 weeks, makes close to $1 billion, depending on what it is. I don't know when we get back to that. It could be years at this point in time. And right now we have a fragmented market because everyone's trying to find that new approach to try and make money equivalent to what the old format was. And the simple fact of the matter is, you're not going to do that.
Here's the thing that I think is important that everybody remembers when it comes to this is that they know where the world is going for next year as well, which is that like we're looking at it through the lens of North America, where we've been fortunate enough there's countries that are doing better than us, but we've had lots of vaccination happening here. Worldwide, lots of places are still waiting. But then you look at us with our vaccination situation, and we're starting to get more breakthrough variants and things like that. So I think that's what they've probably done here is they've gone, all right, well, we know the world has a long way to go still with vaccinations before they can even consider getting back to theaters. We can kind of see things aren't as great as we thought that they were going to be in US 6 weeks ago. Looks like we're headed towards more spike. That's probably going to bring people out of theaters again. So I think that they're smart just to make the decision now and go, let's just count on everybody being closed next year, and we'll just keep on keeping on with this process. And at least we'll be able to keep movies going and keep our production houses moving and keep delivering content. Because otherwise, if we bank on that theater, it's probably not going to happen. I think that it's more of a realism approach that they're taking to the current worldly situation. That's my thoughts.
And I'll be honest, I like going to movies in theaters, but convenience is going to trump that at some point in time, especially if they continue following this model. And if you can go see that big release that you really wanted to see, and I'm sure in Steven's case, it's going to be a lot more different than mine, where I'm buying a ticket for my wife and I. Steven, if your whole family's going, it's what, your 2 kids, yourself, and your wife. So you're buying 4 tickets, popcorn, snacks, sodas, and you look at your wallet at the end of it and go, holy crap, I had to spend a ton of money to go see this. Whereas if it's have a subscription or pay $20 on Disney Plus or whatever and watch it as much as you want, that's a lot more flexible, a lot more easy. So
yeah,
I don't know what's going to happen. It's interesting though.
It's not just the payment and watching it at home versus watching it in a theater. As we've mentioned before, home theaters have increased to the point where I realize it's not a big theater, but you get a big box office experience at home with a decent sound system and a decent screen. It's not as big of a screen, I get it, but you're in a smaller room. So it's getting closer in equality. And I don't know what the future of theaters really is.
But what about our 3D SP?
I was just thinking of virtual reality versus 3D or augmented reality. Yeah.
One thing to keep in mind as we put a pin in that is also that the younger generation doesn't care as much about that big theater experience or the home theater experience. They're watching on their tablet or their iPhone, or they're breaking it up into segments as they're riding the bus between work and home or things like that. So big theater experience isn't as important to a larger demographic now.
That's true. Well, moving on to our next news point here. My next one is actually a couple of weeks old, but hey, it's kind of relevant to some of the things we've talked about on the Gonna Geek show before. And I wanted to follow up with something that we've previously discussed when it comes to the world of security cameras. You may recall that in the past, there have been conversations that we've had about certain controversies that have been out of the world of Ring cameras. For those who might forget, Ring is a camera system company. They made their big bang being video doorbells that Amazon actually purchased a few years back. Anyways, there has been a couple key controversies when it comes to Ring and the footage. The first was that you might recall there was a few employees at Ring that were let go in the early 2020. That's right, way back in 2020. And they were let go because they were caught snooping different customers' footage. But another controversy that's come up is whether or not Ring provides footage to certain authorities if it's properly legally requested. Both of these, though, controversies stem from the same problem. Essentially, your footage is being stored by Amazon in a capacity that they have access to it. That's what it comes down to. But Ring apparently is now rolling out a global thing that rolling out globally, something that they've been testing for the last couple of months in the US, which is end-to-end encryption. Essentially, what this means is that the video will be encrypted and then only be able to be decrypted, aka viewed, by the intended person at the end. So while it's sitting up on Amazon, apparently they do not have an ability to decrypt this. Only you have the power to decrypt. And so that's what they're doing, is this end-to-end encryption. And this means that apparently without the proper credentials, they won't be able to view it. If authorities get it, unless it's decrypted, they won't be able to view it. So that's apparently what this end-to-end encryption is, and they have been rolling it out globally. But here's the thing, is it's not actually enabled for their entire line of products. At the moment, it's only set to work with 13 products, which are hardwired. They have said the battery-powered doorbells do not support it. I kind of myself want to know a little bit more about how this works. Is this something that you're actually setting up a password? Like I know some of the other companies that are not the big guys out there, they have advertised end-to-end encryption where you put a password in that helps generate that encryption key. And that's how they do it. Is that how this is done? I couldn't see how the actual encryption was done. Or is it just tied somehow to your account credentials? And if that's the case, does that mean that they could just change your account credentials to get in? So I want to know a little more about the technical workings of this. But in any case, I like seeing that they've started going up the end-to-end encryption thing, because this has been a big question mark, especially after that. I think there's more than one, but the big one was early 2020, where Amazon admitted they fired some employees for viewing footage. SP, what do you think about this?
The cloud storage is actually a bonus when it comes to security cameras, because then you don't have to worry about somebody cutting the line in the feed, like going out with the power, or to the camera at least, or a thief taking the SD card right out of the camera or something like that. I have a DVR that's local for my surveillance system that is not tied to my Ring cameras. I have a couple Ring cameras, including the doorbell. And I enjoy the ability to have this multifaceted video surveillance system. I won't say security system, surveillance system around the house. With that said, all it has to happen is somebody cut the internet and before they get to your house, and you're not going to be able to have any record of what happens. You'll have a record of what's happening, like maybe right beforehand, if there's some sort of motion detection, but odds are whoever's doing it, cutting off the internet, will cut it off where it's not view your camera. So I think that as long as they're going to store the video there, and they do store it for a while. I mean, if you have a paid plan, they'll store it for, I can't remember what it was, at least 30 days, if not 90 days.
It varies on your plan, I think.
Right.
If it's like how Nest does it.
So let's just take, for example, I have one in my garage, and I'm out working in my garage, right? And I'm installing a new trailer hitch on the car, and it just so happens when I get up from the car that something snags my shorts and depantses me, and it gets caught on camera, and then that gets uploaded to the cloud.
That's a good point.
Yeah, something that nobody wants to see, right? But say it's something that somebody wants to now blackmail me for,
Right.
or whatever, and they could, in the society of posting, what was it called, the Fatmageddon or whatever, and not like this would be appealing to anybody, but
Fappening.
the fappening. This could be posted in one of those reveals, right?
Right.
Of, oh, look, here's SP. He's a podcast, well-noted podcaster, and he can't keep his pants on. That sort of thing. And like, I was just working in the garage and my pants came off. You know, it happened. It doesn't happen often, but it happens when you're doing house projects from time to time, right? That stuff, silly stuff like that happens. And now it's caught. I would want that encrypted, first of all. But second of all, I don't even know if it's encrypted that I really trust it, because the encryption's only as good as the next hacker. So valiant effort, but I don't know if this changes my opinion on how secure the video is or not.
Well, that's one of the technical things that I'd like to know more about, because end-to-end encryption has been huge in messaging over the last couple of years. So I'd like to know a little more. I can't wait for people to test this, because it is something that I think, if it's the right end-to-end encryption and people have tested it and whatnot, then I could see myself finally getting a Ring product, because at the moment there's been this has been one of the big things that I've not wanted a Ring product for. Chris, what do you have to think about this?
It's what they had to do to satisfy people to feel safe with the product. If you don't feel safe with Ring products, this probably isn't going to change your mind. And if you do, this is another thing you can put in your back pocket to be like, oh, I'm firm in my decision to have gone with this product. I don't think it's going to change opinions either way. Steven, I think you're the exception in this case.
I recognize that I am,
Yeah.
and yeah, I'm one of those on the paranoid side of some of these companies having these products.
There's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying that your traditional consumer probably doesn't consider things like that. They consider, hey, can I have footage if someone breaks into my garage? And if I do, how easy is it for me to retrieve it? That's what they're thinking about. They're not thinking about any other implications. And there are other implications to consider with Ring. We've talked about it before with their backdoor services and other things they provide for their neighborhood watch tools and things like that were uncomfortable, I guess might be the way to put it, unless you knew how to opt out, things like that. It's a step forward. Encryption is good. It's a good for the user when your data is encrypted.
Yeah. All right, well, moving on to the next news point here. I believe it was Obi-Wan Kenobi that once famously said, "That's new moon." Is that what he said?
That's no moon. That's a space station. I think that's what the quote. I don't know. I'd have to go. It's Star Wars. I've only seen it a couple hundred times. Anyway, just when you think you know everything about our solar system, it goes ahead and surprises you. An amateur astronomer, Kai Lee, we'll say Lee Ly is his last name, has, or her, I don't even know if it's a guy or a gal, I'm sorry, has discovered another moon orbiting Jupiter. The announcement was reported in Sky and Telescope, which is a monthly online science media outlet owned by the American Astronomical Society. And oh my gosh, I cannot speak tonight. I'm sorry. The original announcement was made on the Minor Planet mailing list on June 30th. Lee made the discovery by regressing data taken in 2003 by the Canada-France-Hawaii telescope that had previously discovered 23 Jovian moons. The discovery, if confirmed, would bring the current tally of Jovian satellites to 80, and this would be the first confirmed planetary moon discovered by an amateur astronomer. This is pretty cool. This is like a hobbyist, but instead of podcasting, it's astronomy. And Lee discovered a new moon. That's awesome. That's like Galileo level stuff.
That is really cool, and I look forward to you having them on Better Astronomying podcast.
Better geek astronomy podcast. I don't know. Whatever. We'll make sure Jason makes up a nice name for it.
There you go.
When are you gonna discover a new moon, SP? Because you're the space guy here, and I feel like it's cool because we know rocket scientists, but and maybe I won't speak for Chris, but I think he shares the same opinion that we would much prefer it if it's like, hey, I know a guy that discovered a moon.
Well, that's great. You know, I do have this passion for space telescopes. I've worked on space telescopes before.
Yeah.
We've talked about it here on the show. I don't know if I talked about it on air or not, but I did apply for a job at a space or at a terrestrial based telescope. Matter of fact, I think it might be the same one that was used here in 2003. And yeah, I would love to do that. But right now, I don't own a telescope and I don't have the time to go regressing data from telescopes that have taken observations. But as soon as I stop podcasting, I can go ahead and do that. So, you know, if you want to replace me on the show, then and better podcasting, then I'm sure I can make that happen.
And one last question that I have about the new moon: are you Team Edward or Team Jacob? I'm assuming that's the new moon we're talking about, right?
Yeah. So anyway, this moon is only 14 miles across or less. It's called the Carnot, I believe, level of moons, jovial moons, which are 14 miles across or less. So it's basically just a big rock in space. So whatever team that puts me on then you'll have to let me know. I have no idea. I lost interest after I watched Sparkly Baseball.
Oh, Chris, what do you got going on in this next news point here, which sounds cool?
Look, I'm just glad we talked about new moons and no one showed their butt. I'll be honest. That's all I'm thankful for.
That's the director's cut.
After just talking about it in the previous segment too.
It's gonna geek after dark. All right, let's move on to my news story here. So we've talked about cell phones and gadgets on this show a lot of times. We've had the Note Watch before when phones were exploding. In fact, we talked about the Galaxy Fold phone, the Gen 1 one, when it came out, about how it was an intriguing product, but kind of suffered from issues where the screen was a bit fragile and things like that. And guys, I don't know if you realize it, we're up to the third generation of the Galaxy Fold and Galaxy Flip phones that'll be coming out. I want to say in August is when Samsung's event is.
Wow.
Yeah. Third generation. And on a side note, supposedly Google's going to be dropping a Pixel Fold phone sometime soon too, based off the leaks.
Yet to see one out in the wild. Have you guys actually seen one?
Very briefly, but I also work in IT. So that's a lot of folks that are like, ooh, I need to have the coolest, latest gadget.
Uh-huh.
I can tell you, I set up all sorts of trap cameras, and I have yet to see one in the wild.
Right.
To be honest, if they weren't so cost prohibitive, I would love to have one when I was playing Pokemon Go a lot, because you'd put Pokemon Go on one side of the screen, you could put Discord up on the other screen to coordinate with things. But it was never worth the price, especially when it came to what some of the weaknesses were with the phone. And why I bring that up is Samsung may be addressing some of the weaknesses that were inherent in the folding phone. There are new leaks that suggest Samsung's upcoming Galaxy Z Flip 3 and the Z Fold 3 will both have IPX8 water resistance. This puts them more on par with their non-folding phones. This information was posted by Max Weinbach and has now been corroborated, by Evan Blass, who we all know as EV Leaks, who has gotten a bunch of news stories and leaks out there. He tweeted the rating along with what appears to be an image from Samsung showing these phones getting splashed with water. So before we dive too deep into here, what does it mean for something to have an IPX8 rating? So IPX8 is not entirely a valid IP rating, but you'll occasionally see it on websites offering enclosures that'll offer enclosures for things. The X simply denotes that the value for that number is missing. You can replace it with 0, assuming it does not have ingress protection ratings. What does that mean for this phone? No ingress protection rating, meaning dust and things like that could, in theory, still be a problem. The 8 in the IPX8, that stands for protection against extended immersion under high pressure, i.e. greater depths. Precise parameters of this test will be set and advertised by the manufacturer and may include additional factors such as temperature fluctuations and flow rates. So the rumored IPX8 rating for the phones covers water resistance, but does not cover dust resistance, which we have seen is a problem on all of these folding phones, because if dust gets in between where that screen is and the glass layer on top, we have seen that be the cause of breaking pixels and getting random weird dead pixel spots on your phone. To a lesser or to a greater extent, we saw what happened when someone literally put a bunch of gravel inside their Galaxy Fold 1 and opened and shut it a bunch of times, and we got rock, dirt, and dust and stuff that got in the hinge. It ended up nuking part of the display. So we've got water safe, which is awesome, because prior to this, they were not water safe. If you dropped it in a pool, you better put it in the minute rice immediately to see that you can save it. This should be solved now. The dust issue, not so much of a solution. And I would say, from my personal opinion, don't expect these enhancements to change the price. I don't think they're going to make it lower or make it higher based off of having waterproofing. But they can spin this capability as something that makes the higher price of foldable devices more palatable, because they're less fragile now. Now, that being said, we're in the third generation now, and we've got a waterproof capability. You got to think that what's on their roadmap eventually is to find some way to have that hinge and seal it off appropriately so that you can get that dust proofing rating too. So the advancement of the technology is really cool here, but I don't know about you guys. It doesn't make me go, oh my God, I have to buy this phone, because it's still more fragile than I would care for the price tag.
As the guy that just dropped his Pixel 4a into a almost deep into a flooding sprinkler head, luckily the case took the brunt of the water. I agree with you a lot, Chris. Wasn't bad enough I dropped it on the pavement. It flipped into the big
Ooh.
puddle that was sitting right there from the broken sprinkler head.
You guys remember a couple years ago when I had my iPhone 8 Plus and I drove over it in the middle of a puddle and it
Yes.
was
Yes.
still working after that?
Yeah, you
Yeah, to
drove
be
it
ki-
over with a GMC Sierra 4x4 crew cab, right?
I
Not-
didn't, but somebody else
Not a
did.
Tesla
Oh,
Cybertruck
right.
tri-motor.
This was before the Cybertruck. It's a couple years before. It was before I got my iPhone 12 Pro Max. So that was face down. And judging by what you're telling me, that would have been difficult for this folding phone to survive because of the impact on the screen from the actual pavement below the tire. Anyway, what I was going to say is what they really need to do for these phones to achieve a little bit more popularity within the like the teens and the 20s and stuff like that is they need to drop some in some of these floating rivers and then have these YouTube channels that come across like Man Plus River or whatever and then find the phone in the water that is still functional. That will instantly win it more fame because, first of all, the guy wearing the scuba mask will go yeah, all excited and whatever. It's totally fake, if you ask me, but all excited. And he grabs the phone and like turns it on and it's still working. So somebody just dropped it, was still charged, whatever. And then there's this emotional thing of him bringing it back to the owner, sometimes still right there. They use like Find My iPhone or whatever to locate it. And they're like, oh, there's my phone. He gives it back to him. Not staged at all. Not saying it's staged, but not staged at all. And then a lot of people go, wow, look, that phone survived being in the water. I want that phone.
And would we use influencers for this? Is that your thoughts?
Well, I think these YouTube channels are
Right.
done by influencers. So absolutely. I would, if I was one of these companies, I'd be like, oh, we're just going to drop this over here. Bloop, you go find it.
Yeah, that's what I thought you were saying, and I hate to burst your bubble, but that's where it falls apart because
The phone literally falls apart.
No, young tech influencers, they don't go outside.
Well, these do. They're scuba divers. They have to.
Yeah, but you're not gonna use scuba divers. They're not gonna get the traction. They're gonna want the tech influencers. That's who they're gonna want to do these advertising.
The tech influencers have to go outside to fly their drones.
But they're not going. They don't anymore. They're the young whippersnappers. They just stay inside all day playing the video games.
Then how can you test tech? I don't understand.
They don't test tech. It's all CGI.
Oh, it seems. Yeah, I mean, like all the cars and car ads now, they're not real cars. They're CGI.
Exactly. They don't even put on their unenclosed course anymore because they're not real.
It's not real. Yeah, it's not the real. And that's true. It's a CGI. If you don't know this, if you're watching a car commercial, the car that you're watching is not a real car. It is a CGI car.
It used to say professional stunt driver on closed course. Now it doesn't say that.
No.
Well, anyways, I like your idea, and I hope they pay you the money you deserve.
The consulting fee.
Consulting fee. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Last news point that we've got here. SP wanted to talk about his new moon. I will talk about my new world.
Uh-oh.
I know.
We found Planet X.
It's true. Planet X. No, this is about Amazon's New World, because if you didn't know this, they have been beta testing a game called New World. Early buzz has been fairly favorable for it, unless, of course, you own an RTX 3090 video card.
How many people own an RTX 3090?
Apparently,
Like
not a lot.
Apparently, at least a couple users own one, because at least a couple users this past week have reported that they have seen issues when they've been trying this game on an RTX 3090. So what's the problem here? Well, is it poor game performance? Is it a locked up computer? Well, kind of all of the above, because the users are reporting that their RTX 3090 video cards are dying, completely dead, fried. That's what these couple users are reporting.
Ooh.
Now, in a statement, an Amazon spokesperson did say hundreds of thousands of people played in the New World closed beta yesterday with millions of total hours played. we've received a few reports of people using high performance graphics cards experiencing hardware failure when playing New World. With that said, there are some 3090 owners who have reported that things have been totally fine. But here's the thing. The 3090 is one of the newest video cards out there, if not the newest. And video cards, even a generation and two older, are so hard to get right now. Prices are through the roof. If it was me and I was using a 3090, not a chance would I keep beta testing this video game at all until they figured this out. Because this is insane. Who knows? Could be something adjacent. It could be there's a common connection in there, like a motherboard doesn't handle it properly, and that's where it fries it. I don't know what the reason is, but if this is true, and a couple people had their 3090s die due to this, and of course we don't see 3090s dying elsewhere, because there's always that chance that maybe it's not just this game, I would be very worried. Very worried.
Oh yeah, especially if you shelled out the money and sat in one of those lines to be able to get a 3090, and then all of a sudden your card is fried. That's a problem. That's a massive problem.
I kept reading this statement by Amazon, and it went on to say, quote, "They're holding it wrong," unquote.
I mean, you're not wrong.
Yeah, I really want to know more about this. I hope they can get some information, and further, I hope Amazon finds a way to do the right thing. And I think we all know what the right thing is for these people with a 3090, and it's that they use their muscle to find them a 3090 to replace the 3090.
Well, what's the warranty on those? Is there any warranty on a graphics card? I've never had to use one, so
probably. I don't know though.
Because that's fair. I think on one hand you could argue like, is it a manufacturer's defect? On the other hand, maybe there should be a safety for whatever this cause was. Maybe there should be a safety in place to stop this thing from happening, because malicious software and things like that, right? So I don't know. I really am looking forward to finding out more, whatever it is, even if it ends up being a coincidence that it's a 3090, or there's a feature on the 3090 that really makes it not a New World problem. But I want to know more. I want to know more about this.
So you're saying the 3090 needs a safe word. What's the 3090 safe word going to be?
Oh my God, stop.
In the chat, by the way, Suncast is saying he thinks the video cards are banned in some US states due to energy consumption.
They might be.
Very well could be. Very well could be. But that's going to go ahead and take us to the end of the show. Before we wrap up, we just want to say, hey, if you've got a 3090 and you've reached the end of this episode, we didn't fry your 3090. Congratulations. But Chris or SP, is there anything that you would like to plug or promote? Let's start with you, Chris.
If your 3090 got fried during this episode, it's not our fault. Blame Amazon, because somehow it's their fault.
I'd also
I would advise you.
Can I also make a suggestion that if you have a 3090 and you think it's fine, it looks like it's operating fine, maybe you could just give it to Chris and he'll give it a test for you.
Yes, because my ancient PC could certainly rock a 3090.
3090 would fry your processor, your CPU.
I'm pretty sure my power supply is not powerful enough to power that thing.
Your whole house goes dead.
That'd be bad.
Is there something, though, you would like to plug or promote, Chris?
Just a friendly reminder, we do have a lot of stuff that streams here on Geeks.live. If you're watching the show live now, you can scroll down to the bottom of the page and see our calendar of upcoming live events. So please come back, check out some more live content at www.geeks.live.
SP, is there anything that you would like to plug or promote?
Yeah, I want to send a nice hello off to a listener, a very special listener to us, Jason Bryant, who just flew off to Tokyo to do his wrestling announcing for the Summer Olympics over there. And more importantly, I want to wish all of the Olympians well during this. I think it's great that the world has gotten together to have competition. I know there's a lot of concerns, but I still think that the world getting together to compete, and that it not being dominated, at least so far, by one country, we're a couple of days in, I think is awesome to have a true worldwide competition. I just wish it was under better circumstances. So thank you to everybody for that. And also, if you happen to be interested in Marvel, we talked a little bit about comic book stuff right now. Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D., we just reviewed the Black Widow movie, and we're going to pick up reviewing MODOK, which was a Hulu series that was on earlier this year. That will be fun. Patton Oswalt is hilarious whenever you watch him or listen to him. And then we're going to be talking What If pretty soon as well. It continues to be a fun ride with Marvel. I know some people have had issue with some of the series, some of the things that have happened, but in the end, it's entertainment, and we haven't had much of that new this year. So it's good to have at least some, even if we tear it apart, because we have torn a couple of these things apart over the last few months, but it's fun doing it. So go catch that on Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D.
So for episode number 385 of the Official Gonna Geek Show, I'm Steven Jondrew saying, yeah, if you want to hear someone tear apart the Loki season finale, go ahead, come to Discord. I'll do it for you.
I'm SP saying good luck to Boeing for their launch this weekend.
I'm Chris and saying don't forget to send your hate mail to js@gonnageek.com.
Bye.
See you guys in 2 weeks.
And for those of you who are going to drop off, SP won't be here next week. We'll have a show, though.
Thanks for checking out another episode of the official GonnaGeek.com show. If you liked the show, please give us a 5-star review in Apple Podcasts or a thumbs up on YouTube. You can always join us for our live recording sessions, which stream Mondays at 8:45 p.m. Eastern at www.geeks.live. And remember, you can find our full back catalog at gonnageek.com/show. If you're itching for more geeky content, check out other shows on GonnaGeekNetwork.com. Voice work was by Emily Prokop of the Story Behind podcast. That's it for this episode. We hope to see you back again next week.
All right, thanks everybody for coming on by. Yes, we will have a show next week. SP will be away, but we'll have a show.
Yeah, I just can't handle it anymore. I need
With
a week away.
13% more nudity.
I think we could do higher than that, Chris.
13 is 14% more butts.
You gotta get to 33 1/3% for booties.
I just had a retirement seminar today, well, all day retirement seminar, and that number of 33.3% is sticking in my mind for some reason. Yeah.
Well, I think that you should just retire and start podcasting full time right now. Tomorrow. Just do it.
The thought has crossed my mind after seeing the numbers.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for coming on by. We'll have a Better Podcasting live chat tomorrow. Come on by. And then Better Podcasting live chat tomorrow. So
And Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. on
Thursday.
Yep. We're going to have Chris from Played Comics on. It's going to be fun talking
Nice.
to MODOK.
Nice. Loki. Terrible ending. Bye.